Boys, I think we are ready to go, and this is awesome. We get an opportunity to talk fantasy football the entire season. We'll start, first of all, with a couple of preseason shows. This is the first one. When did we talk before? What was that show that we did? Like, it was on you. Was that on your show? I think it was on your show.
It was
you hopped on,
right?
Yeah, that's right.
What was that for?
I think it was NFL draft prospects.
Ah, yes. Okay, excellent. So this is an opportunity for me to have you guys on now as guests on my channel. And again, we're going to be doing a sort of like a review in a few weeks on Thursday, the 25th. You can see it up there on the ticker, letting you know also to check out the Draft Sharks YouTube channel, Draft Sharks Fantasy. So subscribe to that if you want the best fantasy coverage out there. You guys do tons of content now more than anything, right, Matt? I mean, this is the time of year. This is your Super Bowl. This is your playoffs, even though we haven't even started the season. But this is like January in the NFL for you guys.
Podcasting alone, I did 4 shows with Jared yesterday. We got several more today. Yeah, this is crunch time for us. This is fantasy draft month. This is when it all really gets real.
It's always funny too, because this is when everyone else starts paying attention and start thinking about their drafts. We've been doing this for 6 or 7 months now, like prepping for this 1 month. All the background research, doing drafts ourselves to sort of get a feel for the landscape. And so we're ready. If you just started thinking about it, we're ready. We got everything ready to go for you.
Yeah, that's why we're here.
What I mean, do you even keep count of how many leagues you get involved with yourself? I mean, how many do you like? 50?
I always lose count. I get asked by somebody every year, and I'm like, I'm not sure. And there's probably one.
It's a little
set the lineup for today.
It's a little embarrassing how many drafts I've done. Most of them are the best ball format where you just draft and that's it. You're done.
I can imagine.
No waivers, no trades.
Yes.
It sets your lineup for you every week for you. Because as far as standard lineup setting leagues, I try to keep it to like 10 to 15. That's all I can handle during the season.
I know we're going to get involved something this year for sure. So. We'll figure it out, but this way we'll be in the same league, even if it's one of those leagues where you and I, and whether Matt joins or not, we'll just be the only ones that know each other. But it just gives us a head start, so we can kind of just have fun being in the same league together, which would be great. The first show that we're going to do here today is an opportunity because the rankings at our lads. So we just created this partnership, and that's the whole reason why we're together. So Draft Sharks is our lads' official fantasy partner right now. And so if you go to the fantasy section of our lads, you click that, you go to the page, and everything's Draft Sharks. So the rankings though are our lads. Just for the skill position players, defense, and kicker. And that's the only thing because I'm not going to get into defensive positions like you guys. Not that I don't know it, but it takes a lot of work. I'm just not going to, that's a full-time gig. So I appreciate the work that you guys put in for that. But anyway, so check that out on our lads page. But the bottom line, my point is the rankings on our lads, those are my rankings. So those are the our lads fantasy rankings. And if you want Draft Sharks rankings, well, you go to Draft Sharks. And so what we did was on this show, we wanted to take a look at the major differences between my rankings and the expert rankings, the guys that are right, and find out like how crazy I am and why I put these players the way I did. Let's start at quarterback. And actually, the one thing I noticed, which was kind of interesting, is that besides Zack Wilson, we have the same 4 quarterbacks, not where we rank them specifically, but in the order in which we put them. So we all had Lance, Lawrence, Fields, and Jones. 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, together. If Zack Wilson was out of the equation, the main difference was I had Zack ahead of Lance, and you guys had Zack behind Jones. So that's the complete difference. Now, I'm sure it's because, and look, I'll be first to make sure that anybody that's ever new to the channel understands this, because this is very important. I am extremely nonpartisan. I do not, because if you're a handicapper, you're somebody that tries to provide the best information you can. You cannot be loyal to blind loyalty to your team. The other words, you know what they are. homerism and things of that nature. I don't involve myself with that. So, but because I'm a Jet fan and I follow the Jets, I get an opportunity to find, hey, do I think this player is better than most people think because they're not really following as much as I am, or maybe a player's worse than most people think. And I just think that Zack Wilson, and I know you guys would probably agree with this because everybody saw what happened at the draft and free agency, that the Zack Wilson has been just, he's got more weapons now and more opportunity to succeed than any of these other young quarterbacks. And I'm seeing that type of progress. So that's the reason I put Zach ahead of everybody. Yes, he was the second pick in the draft. And I think that it also warrants the fact that besides Lawrence, I think he is one of the top quarterbacks in that class. So as far as that class is concerned, I guess what I want to start off with, Matt, I'll start off with you, is in 2025, 2024, 2-3 years from now, how do you think the 2021, those 5 quarterbacks, how do you think you're going to rank them?
I would imagine that at that point, for me, it will probably be. So for fantasy purposes, I would say right now it would probably go Trey Lance, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, and then the other guys. And the primary driver for the fantasy portion is the running that I think those first 3 are going to have over the other 2. Justin Fields probably more so than Trevor Lawrence. I started out liking Justin Fields the best out of this group for fantasy purposes. He landed with the Bears, and they have since, it seems like, done less to help him out. So that makes me, that's the only reason I'm skeptical of his future. I believe in Justin Fields, the player. I don't believe in the organization around him. So, the further you look into the future, I think the more it matters where that guy is. It's really a matter of the top 3 and then the other 2 for me, even more so than the specific rankings among them.
All right. And so in 2 or 3 years, you're going to say that you believe Trey Lance is going to be the top quarterback from the 2021 class in your fantasy rankings.
For fantasy purposes, and I say that separation because I wouldn't be shocked if a couple years from now it's Trevor Lawrence first, or even if it's Justin Fields first, if the Bears figure it out over the next 2 years. But I really like the fantasy outlooks for all 3 of those guys because they can run, because I think they're good passers. Trey Lance, just probably the best setup for talent around him and coaching staff, but love the talent on all 3 of those guys and the fantasy upside.
Okay, and obviously this is really important for Dynasty. More than anything, especially guys that are drafting this year. Okay, so Jared?
I'm with Matt there. I think I'd go the same order. I mean, to me, Trevor Lawrence, and I know last year was ugly. We can get into that if we want, but to me, he's still the safest bet to be a quality NFL quarterback and to be a quality fantasy quarterback. I do think, though, that Lance has the highest ceiling among these guys talking fantasy because of that rushing, because he's tied to Kyle Shanahan, because he's tied to Deebo Samuel now for at least 3 more years. Brandon Ayuk's under contract for a couple more years. George Kittle's still going to be around. So I like the weapons, the coaching, and the rushing ability. To me, put Lance at the top of that list.
Okay, so am I then getting the feeling I'm getting then? I'm not surprised by it. Is that because I can still even hear it today? Is that there are still a lot of people out there that don't buy in that the New York Jets are going to turn anything around. Because what you're saying is that they're probably not going to be very good in 3 or 4 years either. This is just going to be the same team. Those teams are going to be better. So their quarterbacks are going to be better. I don't have any faith that the Jets are going to turn this around.
I mean, it's not necessarily that for me. I think the Jets can turn it around. I'm not going to bet strongly on a big turnaround now, but I would say right now that they're in better shape than the Bears. So it's definitely a difference of fantasy upside more than real life upside for me. I love the receivers around Zack Wilson. I know that he can move. I don't think that he's going to rival Justin Fields in rushing production in the NFL. And I don't think that he's got like 40 passing touchdown upside ahead of him. Okay. So I would just kind of put him down in that range of lower QB2 territory where maybe he pops for, some Derek Carr type of seasons where he gets into like QB 15, 16 range, maybe flirts with the bottom of the top 12. But I don't think that high ceiling is in his future the way that it could be for those top 3.
And is that what you agree with, Jared?
I thought Zack Wilson coming into the NFL was a boomer bust prospect. There was plenty to like about him. There was also plenty to be concerned about. And it's just 1 year, but what we saw from Wilson last year, I'd now lean more towards the bust side of that.
All right. Yeah, I mean, the bottom line, and again, this is why there's sometimes an advantage. You only get that advantage 1 out of 32 teams to follow your own team and understand a player, whether or not you think it's going to go either way. And I never bought into, especially when things weren't going well with Sam Darnold. And even when he started out 3-0 last year, I was telling everybody that's nothing. He's no good. He's not going to be any good. You'll see. It's just I'm not bought in. But Zack Wilson, I saw the turnaround last year after the bye and after his injury, and it was dramatic. And you have to keep in mind that he not only did he turn around last year in a dramatic way, he did it with Braxton Berrios as his number 1 wide receiver. He had no help. He's a rookie out there with a new coaching staff, a first-year offensive coordinator, a pretty weak offensive line, and Braxton Berrios is his number 1. He's throwing to Jeff Smith and all these other guys, and he's actually doing well. I think he only had like a turnover or something like that over his last 4 or 5 games. And most importantly, he was running around, something he did not do in the first half of the season. I was going, why isn't he running around? Where's this running Patrick Mahomes-esque type of plays that we're supposed to see out of this kid? And it didn't happen until the last 4 or 5 games of the season. So that gave me hope that he was going to turn around and be a quarterback that may have a shot. So, but I do think that if you don't see it this year, you're never going to see it.
Yeah. Are you, Greg, hearing anything out of New York about Wilson's progress? Because the stuff I'm reading it's still been kind of shaky in camp. He's had some good days, but he's also had some bad days.
Yeah, I'm hearing the whole camp. I haven't heard anything yet that makes me think, because like you guys know, early on in camp, the defense is always ahead of the offense. And I know the offensive line is still not. There's still some juggling going on there. They haven't been together as a unit, so they have to deal with that. And there's still a lot of new components that they're all trying to put. So it's only been a few days. I'll be worried if this is still going on a couple of weeks from now, the first preseason game. Then I'll be like, well, wait a second, this isn't really looking too good. But I'm not worried just yet. So
you were right, of course, by the way, on the turnovers. 5 straight games without an interception to end the season for Zack Wilson.
Yeah. So, and by the way, the rushing totals too. He actually, and again, I think that fantasy-wise, that is going to be important. I don't think Zack Wilson is, of course, he's not going to run like the other guys, but I don't think Zack Wilson's going to give you 200 yards rushing. I think he could give you 400 yards rushing and maybe 3 or 4 touchdowns a season. Maybe that will be enough. If he does that, Matt, let's say he rushes for 400 yards a season and 5 touchdowns. How many touchdown passes does he have to throw to top the other guys?
If he can get to 400 yards and let's say 3 touchdowns, that would put him top 5 level in rushing production at the quarterback spot. So if he can do that, then, if he can add 27, 28 touchdown passes, that makes him, I think, much more of a fantasy viable guy.
Okay. All right. So, but besides that, the only other difference is you guys have Trey Lance 10 and I have him at 19. So I started the guys a little bit later than you did. Why, Jared, Trey Lance at 10? That's a lot of confidence.
Yeah, same reasons we talked about when we were talking about him before. I mean, the big thing is the rushing. He did that in college. He looks like he can do that in the NFL. Lance ran for 120 yards in his 2 starts last season. So that's a full season pace of a little over 1,000 rushing yards. If he does that, he's going to finish higher than where we even have him ranked.
Yeah, it's funny because when I was watching the game last year, and I've got Game Pass, so I watch every game and I watch every play, and it could get monotonous, especially about the end of the season. But so I'm watching that game, and it's funny because after the game that week, everybody was trashing and saying he's not ready at all, and for weeks because he didn't play again. He's not ready. Blah blah blah. I'm like, what game did you watch? I mean, he had injuries himself. If you watch the game, he was making great plays with his legs. There were guys who were dropping passes that he threw that should have been caught, and they almost beat Arizona. So what game are you watching? This kid's first start. So I wasn't very surprised at all that Trey Lance is now starting to gain momentum. because I actually did. I mean, I don't know if you guys felt that way as well. That yeah, he's going to be okay. I don't understand why everybody's kind of trashing him.
People don't watch games, Greg. They just look at the final box score and how many fantasy points their guys put up.
Yeah, it's our job to watch the game. Yeah,
exactly.
Okay, before we move on, let's talk about a couple of veterans. Let's talk about Watson. So we both have him pretty much around the same area. You have him 19th, and I have him 17th, and I basically just put him at 17th, right after the halfway point of a first string and a second string in most leagues, 16. So that's kind of why I did that. But now it's only 6 games. There was some thought about 8 games, Matt. So I see. I don't think it's changed much on your end. He's clearly the first number 2 guy you want to take, I would guess, in a regular draft. Where would you take him though, and how high would it be depending on how high your first quarterback went? Like if you took a guy like I don't know, let's say you took a Trey Lance and he was your number 1 quarterback, would you be a little bit more prone to go with Desean Watson a little earlier than most? And how high would you take Watson as a number 2 quarterback?
I certainly think I would take him in the range of where we have him ranked. We've had him projected for 6 missed games for a while now. Right. Of course, we're waiting now to see about the NFL contesting that ruling and seeing if it gets extended any further. But the way that these things move, I don't know that we're going to get any change on that by the start of the season. He's a totally unique case because we know he's going to miss at least the first 6 games. Once he's back, his history tells us that he could be a top 4 quarterback the rest of the way. We didn't see him play football at all last year. It's a whole new team now. I don't know how much that matters because he's got enough around him with Cleveland. I think that their spending this offseason certainly indicates that Cleveland will throw the ball at least a bit more than it has the past 2 seasons. So there should be the same kind of upside path for Watson, assuming that he's the same player. And I think that indications are that he is. So, yeah, it matters how you start out. I think if I get somebody like Trey Lance, that's the range where I would look to take Desean Watson as number 2. From that QB like 10 in our rankings to, anywhere lower than that is where I would look a little earlier to get that number 2 quarterback, especially somebody with that kind of upside like Desean Watson. If I take an earlier QB, then I'm investing more draft capital. I'm getting somebody that I expect to be more dependable week to week. And in that case, I'm probably passing on Watson unless other people are letting him fall in that draft. But I mean, once he's on the field, I expect that Watson he'll probably be a weekly top 12 guy in our weekly rankings from that point.
Okay, then Jared, what about Dynasty? How do you handle Desean Watson in a Dynasty draft?
I'm buying on the uncertainty right now. I mean, I guess you hope this is kind of the last issue he runs into as far as league suspension, and he's still in his 20s. He still has at least a handful of what I think are going to be elite fantasy seasons. I'm with Matt. I think he's probably a top 8 fantasy quarterback whenever he's back on the field because he's an excellent passer. He runs, which again is huge at the quarterback position. So. If there's any buying opportunity in Dynasty on Watson right now, I would take advantage of it.
Where you would rank him right about where? Top 8, you said?
Dynasty wise, yeah, he'd be maybe just outside the top 8 for the uncertainty, for the chance of suspension this season. And there's obviously off-field issues with him that could crop up again in the future. So you have to bake in that risk a little bit. But yeah, he'd be right around quarterback 10 for me in Dynasty.
Yeah, and since he's a starter, which he should be on your Dynasty team, you definitely need to make sure you have a good quality number 2.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. And then the last one is Aaron Rodgers. So this is a big difference we had. And I have him 8th, so I still have him in the top 10. You guys have him down to 17th. So I can see why. Okay, Adams is gone. Totally get that. I am maybe part of it is that I'm definitely a lot higher on Dabs, rookie, and think that could help. And Aaron Rodgers is just so good, and he's so motivated to prove to everybody. Oh, you think this is all about Devonta Adams, huh? I'll show you. I get also that they're going to run the ball a lot because you have Jones and Dillon. Why not run the ball a lot? But to me, it sounded like it appears to be a pretty big drop, Matt. 17. Explain why you're not so confident in Aaron Rodgers putting up numbers that pretty much put him as a a mid to lower level backup.
Yeah, there are a couple things here. So first off, it's a tight range of our rankings. If you look at our default projections, he's 17th, but he's 8 total points away from being 13th. So, that's less than half a point a game. He's 19 points, I think, from being inside the top 12. So, things can change quite a bit, and that's kind of a nebulous range of quarterback. Now, the reason I am fine with him being down that low is the primary factor that you already mentioned. He's losing a guy that made up 33% of his production passing wise over the past couple of years. Just before that 2-year stretch, we saw Aaron Rodgers already sinking production wise and had us wondering if he was over the hill at that point. So I think there's a chance that we get some decline from the player. I'm not betting heavily on the, talent decline from Aaron Rodgers, but it's really just the huge question of what do things look like without Davante Adams? And even if Aaron Rodgers remains efficient, does the offense remain efficient? Do they continue passing as much as they did? They already weren't an extremely high pass rate team, so it could just be a volume question. And then it's just the other players in that range. I'm not scared of the ultimate ceiling on Aaron Rodgers by ranking him that low. So it makes it easier for me to, push him off because of the questions without being scared that I'm going to miss out on something huge if I'm wrong in how low I am on him.
How would, give me something that would put Rodgers in a situation where he completely, like if we're doing Jared like a best case scenario for Aaron Rodgers, what is it?
He has a super high touchdown rate this season, which he has done, often throughout his Hall of Fame career.
And why would that be? That means the rookies have to come into play.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, Allen Lazard is a quality receiver, especially when you get into the red zone. He's a bigger guy, contested catch guy. I do think Aaron Jones is one of the best pass catching backs in the NFL. Then, like you said, Romeo Doubs is making waves. We'll see what Christian Watson can give them. I mean, there's options there, and Rodgers is a Hall of Fame quarterback, and it's always scary to bet against those guys. But like Matt said, I don't think the ceiling is super high. The only thing I'd add to what Matt said about kind of why we're down on Rodgers. He used to be a guy that would give you 300 rushing yards a season and a handful of touchdowns. Yep. His rushing yards have declined now every year since 2016. He averaged a career low 6 rushing yards per game last year. So he's basically a zero in that department now, which matters a lot in fantasy.
Yeah, he's not even running at all unless he has to now.
And just to emphasize that touchdown rate point, the past 2 years he led the league in passing touchdown rate. So even if Davante Adams were still there, that's likely to come down because even last year's league leading number was down 2 percentage points from the year before. If we look before that 2-year stretch, he was below 5% in passing touchdown rate, 11 in fantasy in 2019. He was a little bit even the year before, but we're watching QB points go up around him with all the running quarterbacks that are now in the league. So that kind of gets back to the point of I'm not scared that there's this ultimate ceiling that I'm missing out on.
Okay. I tell you what, let's talk about receivers first. And when we do that, I want to talk about the Dolphin situation, the combination too of Tua and Waddle and Tyreque Hill, because we're different with that idea. Tua is not too different, but the receivers are. You guys have Tyreque Hill 7, I have him 18, and you have Tyreque Hill. You have Waddle. The biggest one is Waddle. You guys have him 18, I have him 44. Part of the reason for me is a couple of reasons. One is I do think that Gesicki is going to come into play. So I think there's going to be a lot. I don't think it's just going to be, okay, I'm going to throw the ball to Tyreque Hill and Waddle, and those guys are going to get a ton of catches, and not just Gesicki, but I think couple other guys might come into play as well. But the main thing is I'm just not sold yet on Tua as somebody that is going to throw the ball deep and you're going to get those big plays. I think Tyreque Hill is going to have to make a lot of, which he's been able to do. He's going to have to make a lot of 10-yard catches into 50 yards, that kind of thing, in my mind, especially Waddle. And then to add both of them into the top 20, I just can't do it with Tua. I just can't. I'm not sold he's going to stay healthy the entire season. So I just think it's a risk that I wouldn't want to take. So I'd have to see those guys dropping a little bit more before I say, all right, now they're valuable, before I put them, especially Tyreque Hill. And I know he could have been a 1, and 7 is maybe a bargain if you look at it that way. But I'm just not sold on Tua yet in that kind of fantasy, way that could help these receivers out, Matt.
Yeah, so it is a risk to have them where they are. I would say, on the other hand, they are both lower in our rankings than they would be if their situations were the same as last year. So you mentioned Tyreque Hill's at 7. If he was still in Kansas City, he would be 1, 2, 3, somewhere up there here. Jalen Waddle is coming off setting the rookie record for receptions. So, wide receiver 18, maybe that's high for what they have going on now in Miami, but it's probably low versus what he did last season. I think he would be going earlier. So I guess having them not too much lower is just kind of a bet on the talent and a bet on these moves, saying that Miami is going to try to capitalize the talent on hand. The big unknowns here are several. I mean, Tua, I don't know what to make of him either. I'm certainly not buying all the way into Tua, and that's part of not ranking these guys higher and also not going out of my way to target them even at this specific price. There are other players around them that I might like to get more. But we've never seen Mike McDaniel as a head coach, so we don't know what the offense is going to be. We can guess based on what the Kyle Shanahan offense looked like because he was the OC there most recently, but it's the first time running his own show.
That's right.
I'll say on that front, the moves that they've made this offseason, paying for Tyreque Hill, paying for Chase Edmonds in the backfield, paying for Cedric Wilson, it all indicates that they're going to try to throw the ball more than what we've typically seen from Kyle Shanahan offenses. Now, beyond that, it's more of we'll see, and having the guys where they are, the wideouts, is a bet on talent.
And you pick up a great point with the coaching staff, because that's the other thing, not just fantasy wise, but when you start going into predictions and stuff, it's going to be so competitive in the AFC, and you got a coach that's never been there before, and those things usually cost a few games. So fantasy wise, I could definitely see it being an impact as well. It's interesting, Tyreque Hill's numbers, I was just checking up, looking at them, they actually dropped a little bit per catch, really poorly last year compared to his normal 14, 15 yards per catch, down to 11.2 last year, which is right around where Waddle was. So again, as I said, don't you think, Jared, that that's what you're really counting on, is that?
Yeah.
And by the way, if you're in a fantasy league where catches matter, that's going to be a lot different than when they don't matter as much.
Well, yeah, I'm glad you brought up Tyreek yards per catch, because that's the point I wanted to make, is that the Chiefs used him more as a short range receiver last year. His average depth of target was way down last year. It's actually like middle of the pack. So, Tyreek is obviously an elite deep threat. He's also an elite short range receiver. Get the ball in his hands, let him make plays after the catch. The touchdown he scored in the playoff game against the Bills was a short catch he took to the house. So we'll see what Mike McDaniel picked up from Kyle Shanahan, but Shanahan has always been good at being creative and getting the ball into his playmakers' hands. Deebo Samuel last year turning into a running back basically. So I'm hoping that's how McDaniel envisions using Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. That's what Tua's best at. He is much better throwing in that short range than he is going deep. So it's obviously a downgrade for Tyreek Hill going from Kansas City to Miami, but like Matt mentioned, that's baked into the ADP at this point. He's going a round and a half later than he would be if he was in Kansas City. And to me, more than anything else, these guys are just bets on talent. Like, I think Tyreek Hill is still a top 5 receiver in the NFL. Jalen Waddle, high draft pick, set the rookie record for catches. Like, he seems to be trending towards becoming, one of the better wide receivers in the NFL. So at some point, even with the quarterback questions, I'm just going to bet on that.
Well, and that quarterback's the most accurate in the NFL, right? According to Tyreek Hill.
That is right. And we know that's what makes Tua supposedly the quarterback that he is, that he hasn't become yet, but what he was at Alabama. So now that he has the weapons like he had at Alabama, put up or shut up time for Tua.
Yes.
But he's got to stay healthy first and foremost. Okay, now let's talk about the Tennessee Philadelphia dynamic, and we'll start with AJ Brown. I have him 7, and you have him 16th. So I picked one finally where I overrated somebody, and you have him back. So with Brown, with the Eagles, and it's interesting because you guys have, where do you have Hurts? Like 5?
6, yeah.
6. Yeah.
So you have him a little bit higher than I do, but I just found out interesting that you had him 5 and you have Brown 16 compared to me 7, and I was kind of weird, but I don't know what that says. And maybe of course they have a dynamic number 2. I completely get that. But with AJ Brown, I don't know. I just feel like with that offense that, and he's maybe got something to prove as well, Matt. I don't know. I just think he's gonna have a huge season.
AJ Brown's the kind of player that it scares me to bet against. My big issue with him is volume. I mean, I love the player, but so far he has finished 32nd, 7th, and 29th in PPR points per game. So we've already seen him in a low volume pass offense. I do expect Philadelphia to throw the ball a lot more than they did in the second half of last season and overall. And we saw them be a pass heavy offense to begin last year. I think we're going to get them moving all the way back to that. I do think that they'll be like middle of the pack, probably in run pass split. And, that's the question that we have to project, that we have to make guesses at what it'll be. But, if they shift like the Bills did a couple years ago, where they're all of a sudden passing on 60% of plays, then yeah, AJ Brown should absolutely be higher than where we have him. But heading in for me right now with what Jalen Hurts has showed us so far through really just one full season as a starter to this point, I'm not ready to expect that. And I'll leave AJ Brown a little bit behind where people are going to draft him.
Yeah, and the other thing too, Jared, is the fact that you do have Devonta Smith as a number 2, and he's very good. And he's like, it's like having 2 number 1s really on the Eagles. Yeah. And do you feel confident about Hurts? There's a difference between Hurts as a fantasy quarterback and Hurts as a winning quarterback in the NFL. There is going to be that difference. And also keeping Miles Sanders healthy, that is going to be big for the Eagles, whether or not they decide to throw the ball more.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the reason that we're a bit higher than you on Hurts and lower on the wide receivers is Hurts gets so much of his fantasy value from the rushing production. He can finish as a top 6 fantasy quarterback and not put up huge passing numbers. But I'm with Matt. It comes down to the volume for AJ Brown. I mean, the Eagles were dead last in pass attempts last season. They're going to throw more this year, but are they going to jump into the top 10 in pass attempts? Because I think that's kind of where they need to be for Brown to finish as a top 10 fantasy wide receiver. I do think Devonta Smith's going to continue to play a big role in the passing game. I think Dallas Goedert is one of the 5 best pass catching tight ends in the NFL. Yep. So I think he's going to command a big share of targets too. So it's just, is there going to be enough to go around for AJ Brown to get him into that top 10? I'm betting against it.
Yeah. Okay. Then we talk about Tennessee and the big difference we have with their receiver situation. So you have Burks at 42, and I have him at 68. I look, I really liked, and I thought the whole Burks story last year was nice, but there was also the whole pre-draft stuff and his combine, and then now you're hearing the way that he's looking so far and his conditioning, even though his coach has kind of Pittman kind of talked about, well, that's the way Burks is, that's what he did here. I just get the feeling it's going to take him time. I think he's going to be okay. Sort of like the way I feel with Garrett Wilson, because I haven't projected lower than most people. I just think that it's going to take guys like Burks, especially, and even Wilson, but Burks, since we're talking about him, a little bit more time, and why I have him as a number 2. And I think Robert as a guy that'll be better next year, and also maybe yes, a number 2 behind Robert Woods. Matt.
Yeah, I certainly think that there's a chance that he's the number 2 receiver behind Robert Woods. I think the ultimate cautionary tale here is Justin Jefferson, and I don't think that Treylon Burks comps to Justin Jefferson, and I don't think that anybody is ever going to be the kind of guy that we should project to have the immediate impact of Jefferson or Jamar Chase. But I think that Treylon Burks is very talented, just raw talent, yes, regardless of how ready he is for the NFL. And he steps into a situation where he could be behind Robert Woods, but he could also very quickly be their top receiver and produce at an efficient level like A.J. Brown just did for this team, where he's giving us more yardage, more touchdowns than we should generally expect from the level of targets. So given that we're talking about going outside the top 40, really anywhere outside there, I would rather bet on his talent and opportunity outside of that range just in case he hits, because if he doesn't, then I'm not really losing that much. I would be more concerned about being out on him and watching him do something really useful for fantasy teams this season than I am worried about, making the slight bet on him as like a wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5, and not getting much from him.
And then the factor too, Jared, we have to throw in is Ryan Tannehill, and what's going on there. Maybe it's a good thing. Maybe he'll light a fire and he'll have a really good season. I just think it's overblown that Tannehill is like all of a sudden washed up or something. I think those are the people that are probably complaining the most, are the ones that spoke too highly of him to begin with. Like, you guys are just giving him all this praise and credit. Stop. He's not that good. But so when he blows up in your face, he's no good. He's washed up now. No, he's always been that guy. I don't know what you guys were thinking he was.
Yeah, he's fine. I think he's a league average quarterback. The bigger issue for Burks is this is going to remain a run-heavy offense. It's going to center around Derrick Henry. The Titans have been bottom 8 in pass attempts all 4 seasons under Mike Vrabel, and they're probably a good bet to finish bottom 8 again this season. So that's the concern for Burks' fantasy value. I'm with you, Greg, too. I think he is kind of more of a project than NFL-ready guy. A lot of his production in college was schemed up. Now, on the flip side, he put up massive numbers, even going back to his freshman season in the SEC, which is impressive. And he's big. He can make plays after the catch.
Yes.
So
he's the type of receiver that you could also just give him the ball in the backfield, jet sweeps,
exactly.
all that. And the funny thing is he doesn't run that fast, and yet he finds a way to make plays.
Yeah, I think he plays faster than he timed. I saw him run away from SEC.
Yeah, he
corners,
must.
So I'm not concerned about the speed. And it's just again a bet on the upside. Like, what if he is ready to go, and what if he does lead this team in targets? And by the way, the conditioning stuff was concerning in the spring. Everything out of Tennessee, once camp has started, from both coaches and the media, has been that Burks is back in shape. It's not really a concern going forward.
He's not the first guy to get soft on that post-draft circuit.
Sure.
About the running back situation before you move on with Tennessee and Derrick Henry, because you guys have him a little bit further down than I do. I have Henry still as a top 5 guy. The thing is going to be, we don't know. We know the history of running backs, that especially after the injury, is not going to get the workload that he's had in the past. And they shouldn't give him the workload. It just wouldn't be right. And then how does that factor in also to someone like Hassan Haskins? Because I think Haskins should be the number 2 running back. I know maybe he'll share some carries early. But that I think makes Haskins an intriguing dynasty pickup. I really do, especially because Derrick Henry is probably only going to be at the top of this game for another year or two. How do you guys see Haskins? And we can kind of move on to also the rookie running backs this year. How would you rate Haskins in that group? And why did you put Henry down a little bit more than I did? Because you had him on the verge of being maybe outside the top 10.
I wouldn't have Haskins high among the rookies. I do think he's a good stash because, Derrick Henry, at the rate at which they use him, probably doesn't have long left in the NFL, and, just the general age for running back. I wouldn't go too far because, if Derrick Henry is done next year, then the Titans are probably adding something at running back, maybe even earlier in the draft. So I don't want to overtrust that he's the plan for the future. So I think he's interesting at a handcuff level. I think he's interesting in case Derrick Henry's career ends sooner than we might expect. The reason why Derrick Henry is a little bit down for us is really, for me at least, it's the injury risk of carrying the ball that much is one thing, because the more that a running back touches the ball, the more likely he is to get hurt. That's an even bigger factor in projecting those injuries. And we do that with the Draft Sharks injury guide. How many touches a running back gets is an even bigger factor than his injury history. So that factors in. I do think that they will keep him up in that over 20 carries a game range, so he will be at risk. And then the other question that I think is more of a question this year than it was the past couple is the Tennessee offense. I mean, we've talked about A.J. Brown being gone. They are totally different on the passing front. I have no idea how good they're going to be, especially if Treylon Burks takes a while to get going. They could be a not very good passing offense, which could make them a not very good offense overall, which is going to cut down on those second half opportunities for Derrick Henry that he got probably more of than people realize, because this was a team that was the top AFC seed in the playoffs last year. They ended up with a very good record playing from ahead quite a bit. And if Derrick Henry's not playing from ahead, he's going to get the ball less and he's going to face worse situations.
Okay, before we move on to full running back talk, so a few of these other receivers, and maybe we could talk about, I'll tell you what, let's talk about one more veteran before we talk about some of the younger guys, and that's Juju Smith. So I have him in the top 15. You guys have him more of a top 30 type of receiver. And the Chiefs' receiving situation, Jared, is going to be interesting because this is like wide open. This is all new stuff. And I look, Juju Smith was a very productive receiver a few years ago. The question is that there? Is that still there? We don't know. We don't know if it's still there. I'm banking on it still being there because Patrick Mahomes is a lot younger than Ben Roethlisberger, and I look at it as maybe more of a Ben Roethlisberger, Patrick Mahomes thing. Combination of Juju. I'm not going to, give him the clean bill there that he didn't also have a problem. But I'll say he's going to have a big year. He's going to be the number one receiver. And I actually believe that Scantling will end up the number 2 receiver. I know there's a lot of high on Sky Moore. I prefer Sky Moore as a dynasty guy, just like we talked about with Burks and with Watson. I mean, with Wilson. So I think Scantling, and there's been reports that things are looking pretty good. He's a big guy. Mm-hmm. I think Scantling will end up as the number 2 behind Juju.
I mean, massive opportunity here for all these guys in this Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes led offense with Tyreek Hill out of the picture. And I think Juju has maybe the widest range of outcomes of like any receiver in fantasy this season. I mean, if he's that guy we got in Pittsburgh his first 2 seasons, I mean, he had one of the best starts to a career in NFL history for a wide receiver. And then the last 3 years, he's just been bad. And he's had injuries, but he also, even comparing Juju Smith-Schuster to his teammates in Pittsburgh, like he was less efficient than James Washington, than Chase Claypool. Like, so the quarterback play was bad, and I get all that, but he just wasn't good. So it's what version of Juju are we getting? At some point in drafts, like he's worth betting on for the upside. Because again, he could be a top 12 wide receiver if he, emerges as the clear number 1 guy for Patrick Mahomes. But man, just how bad he's been. And it's not just like he wasn't bad for 1 season. Yeah. It was, 3 seasons in Pittsburgh where he was just not good. So he's a scary bet to make, but I definitely see the upside.
What about Scantling? Do you have more? You guys have more over Scantling?
I think we have more. They're like back to back in our rankings.
That's what I saw. Yeah.
To me, MVS is what he is. He's a downfield guy. I don't think he can be like a true number 1. He never saw big target shares in Green Bay. He's around 14, 15%. I think that's going to be about where he is in Kansas City. And again, that can work because you're, playing with Patrick Mahomes, one of the best deep ball passers. It's going to be a pass heavy offense. So I'm fine with MVS. I think Juju and Sky Moore have a higher ceiling than MVS this season.
Jared and I disagree on Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and I think that he's the guy in Kansas City that has the widest range of outcomes. For one thing, beyond what you guys have already discussed on Juju in Pittsburgh, we've seen 2 straight off seasons where he hit the open market and couldn't do better than a 1-year contract. So that's the league saying, this guy's not what he was the first 2 years with the Steelers. And the Chiefs signed him to a 1-year deal, signed MVS to a multi-year deal. There's been the talk of them using him as more than just a deep guy. So I'm not going overboard on trusting MVS, but I do think that his range of outcomes includes the possibility of him leading this wide receiver core in targets. And I can get him as the 3rd Chiefs wide receiver in drafts. Yes. So that's a big reason for me that I'm not on Juju Smith-Schuster, because I think he's just limited. I don't think he has this ultimate wide receiver 1 upside in fantasy. So I'm not worried about even what happens if he does lead Chiefs wideouts in targets this year. I would rather wait, take MVS, and then see what the Chiefs do with this new group.
Yeah, I mean, let someone else overdraft Juju. Like, put him in a reasonable area. But, hey, you know what? If they want to take him at 15, 16, whatever, let him do that. And that's also maybe a sign that, all right, I'm just going to sit back and be patient, because most fantasy owners are probably, like you said, going to go with Sky Moore second. And as soon as he comes off the board, then you can go, all right, now I can start thinking about stealing Valdez-Scantling. So I like that strategy. I wanted to also ask you about the Jacksonville situation, because they've got the new receivers, and it's all interesting. And I honestly believe that any of the top 3 guys, and I'm not even going to include Marvin Jones, I think any of those 3 guys, Shenault, Zay Jones, and of course Christian Kirk, can finish 1 through 3. Yeah, if you want to throw Marvin Jones into that as well, okay, at some point, he's always going to put up his numbers. But I think any of those 3 guys that I mentioned can finish 1, 2, 3. Jared.
I'm with you on Christian Kirk and Zay Jones. I'm kind of out on Shenault at this point. I don't think he and even what we're hearing out of Jacksonville, he's just not going to be a big part of the offense. It's a new regime there. It doesn't seem like they want him to be too big a part of the offense. We'll see. I mean, I loved the guy coming out. I hope he can turn it around, but I'm not betting on it. But just in general, and I know Matt's with me here, we're buying the Jags offense this season. Total clown show last year with Urban Meyer there. Big coaching upgrade with Doug Peterson in town. We had Jaguars beat writer Hayes Carleone on our podcast a couple of days ago, and it's funny. He said the biggest difference between last year's offense and this year's is that this year's offense is functional. Ooh, so that's a great start. Yeah. That's a great start.
Okay, so Matt, what about a couple of the other younger receivers? Who catches your eye? Because when I'm looking here, and I'm not talking about the top guys, couple of young receivers that we disagree on. I have I got Marshall at 65. Terrace Marshall from Carolina at 65. You guys have him at 101. I have Bayless Jones, the rookie, at 66. You have him at 102. Marshall, I think this is about. I think Robbie Anderson is just such a virus. And you can't tell me Baker Mayfield is going to all of a sudden, you want me to throw the ball to you? Okay, we'll see about that. And I think everything I'm also hearing about Marshall, I think he could have a big breakout, as much as you can break out with a Baker Mayfield passing offense. And Bayless Jones I'm really high on, because everybody's talking about the Bears don't really have receivers, and I get that. So they're looking for guys. Some guys have got to catch the football. Some guys have got to get touches. And I think they're going to give Bayless Jones an opportunity to touch the ball a lot. And he's a playmaker. He gets the ball in his hands. He could score. Matt.
I'm buying the Panthers receivers in this way. I'll take Robbie Anderson and Terrace Marshall in the same draft, because they're going late enough that I'll just pair them up. They're sitting on my bench, and we'll see what happens in terms of target distribution and who's performing. Terrace Marshall is kind of a crazy case. Everybody pretty much liked him to some degree last year. They said, no, look, here's this talented guy that has played inside and outside at LSU. Now he's going to the Panthers, where the OC is a guy who also coached him in college. So he should be in good shape. He had a terrible rookie season. So now we don't really know what to make of him. And it seems like the fantasy landscape is totally out, just because of the history of wide receivers who face plant in that first season. It says he's not likely to rebound. That reality, though, has made people totally give up on him, and now you don't have to pay to bet on him. So that's the key is, the numbers fall out how they do for where he sits in our rankings, but he is somebody at the price you have to pay that I would be more willing to buy than I am to pass on, because there's really no cost in taking a shot that he does rebound in any way. And, Robbie Anderson, I said I'm buying on him as well. I agree with you, though, that he could flake out and, be out of the picture by midseason. So if that happens, it obviously only helps Terrace Marshall. So I'm buying that, 2-3 wide receiver in Carolina. Bayless Jones, I agree with the case that you made for him. The numbers aren't going to be there because his college profile stinks.
Sure.
He didn't really break out as a receiver until the very end of a 6-year college career, but he landed with a team that clearly liked him better than the rest of us do, and a team that doesn't have much going for it at wide receiver, to the point that they traded for N'Keal Harry. So there is opportunity. And like I said, with Terrace Marshall and Robbie Anderson, you just stash him, whatever, the exact number, you put him at the end of the draft. And if we get to week 5 and he's still not doing anything, then you dump him for something else. But if we get to week 5 and he's a starter and he's getting, 4 to 6 targets a game, that could be somebody that helps you at some point, especially because I am certainly still buying on Justin Fields, the player.
Yes.
And one of the greatest things that he does is throw a deep ball, which can give us efficient fantasy scoring.
That's the thing. Fields, if he's going to put up numbers in any way, shape, or form, somebody has got to help out. And I think Bayless Jones might be one of those guys. Jared?
Yeah, I think this is a good time, too, to point out that on Draft Sharks, we have the baseline projections for every player, and that's what, puts them where they are in their rankings. But we also have floor projections and ceiling projections for every player. What's the downside case? What's the upside case? And for someone like Terrace Marshall, you're going to see his ceiling projection a lot higher relative to his baseline projection, because if he is the guy we thought he was coming out of LSU last year, he could deliver to up where you have him ranked, Greg, or even higher. So it's definitely important to look at all 3 of those projections on Draft Sharks.
And of course, Dynasty is a completely different situation. So I'm definitely more in on Marshall and Jones in Dynasty situations than 2022, and we can kind of go from running back, starting with the Bear situation, because I was really high on Herbert last season, and I drafted Montgomery on one of my teams. And so later in the draft, I definitely swooped up and got Herbert. So I was in a good situation and I think that's what you should do. If you draft Montgomery, you need to go ahead and get Herbert, because Herbert, I think he's one of the better young number 2 running backs. I didn't necessarily work that into I don't think we were way off on either of the projections. But the point is we're referencing the Bears, is we know that they're going to also need and want to run the football a lot with those 2 running backs. So do you think there's a chance Montgomery has a big season in him? We know how good he was at Iowa State. He got off to such a slow start, then boom in year 2, and now you got Herbert and Montgomery. But it could also be an issue with Herbert getting a lot more of Montgomery's touches, Matt.
I think that there could be a good season in him. I don't think that this offense is going to be enough for him to have a truly big season. I think the best case scenario for David Montgomery here is that the Bears don't give that many touches to Khalil Herbert as number 2, don't involve Treston Ebner much as a receiver, and do get close enough to the goal line that he reaches double digits in touchdowns, while also throwing him enough passes. And so, all of those things have to come together to go his way to really have, a truly strong fantasy season. And it's tough for me to bet on all of those things working in Montgomery's favor.
Let's now wrap up with the running backs. And so the biggest difference, there's a couple of big ones. Let's talk about, first of all, an interesting story, and that's what's going to go on with Leonard Fournette. Everybody's talking about that he weighs 500 pounds, and
not anymore. He's back. He's back in shape.
Yeah, and that's not surprising. We knew that was going to happen. That's just the way that he is. But for me, you guys have him at 10. I have him at 26. The big difference is that if you look at it, it's because also I have Rashad White at 36, and you have him at 53. So I just think that. It could be workload. It could be I just don't trust Fournette for an entire season. Maybe he'll take a few games off. And White might actually end up being my number 1 sleeper in the entire draft. And even though he's 3rd round, so it's not a deep sleeper. I am extremely high on White. And that's the reason I have him where he is. And also because, again, I just don't know if I can trust Leonard Fournette. And I just think that was just a little bit of a warning sign and a reminder that you just can't trust Leonard Fournette. So that's the reason I think that we have differences. But I could completely see why you guys have him at 10 because of Tom Brady and their offense. And if he plays most of the season, he's going to get a ton of yards and a ton of touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean, Tom Brady trusts Leonard Fournette, which is the big thing here. He trusts him in the passing game, in pass protection. So if Fournette gets anything close to the role he had, over the final 2/3 of last season, he was a top 5 running back, in that role in this offense. So, and that's the bet I'm making this season. I'm with you, Greg. I love Rashad White. He is big. He's athletic. You look at his pass catching stuff at Arizona State. He is, one of, if not the best pass catching backs in this draft class. If something happens to Fournette, I think Rashad White could be a top 12 fantasy running back. I just think it's going to take a Fournette injury for White to, get on the field much.
Yeah, and White definitely in Dynasty. Definitely on high. He'd be my first pick. Wherever I have my pick, I'm taking White in a rookie draft this year. Okay, then the other one that was pretty big, Matt, and again, I can completely understand why we have a difference here, Rashad Penny. I know the whole injury history. I'm completely on board with that, and I could see why you guys have him at 39. The main disagreement I'm going to have, though, is to have him behind Walker. That's all. But I guess if you're going to drop him as much as you are, that means that you really don't feel confident he's going to start a lot, and therefore you're thinking Walker's going to end up getting more snaps than Rashad Penny. So I guess I can see that. But again, I have Penny at 14. You guys have him at 39. We're actually not that dissimilar where we ranked Walker, but I'm going to bank. That's all I'm doing. But maybe this is also, Matt, a little bit of a strategy play. Hey, if somebody wants to take Rashad Penny really high, let him. But as soon as he starts dropping just a little bit, I might, depending on who I've taken, maybe with my first or second pick, maybe I feel like I could gamble on Penny because we all know it's still a little bit of a gamble. If it works out, it could be a great gamble.
This one's a guess, I think, more than a projection, because there are a lot of things that we don't know here. I mean, if a team has its running back intact from last year and then takes one in round 2, we should assume that they love that round 2 running back. We also know, though, from history that Seattle is goofy. Like we can't tell from draft capital what they're going to do. They signed Matt Flynn for a whole bunch of money, and then Russell Wilson beat him out immediately as a 3rd round pick. We know that Pete Carroll is going to let the guy who wins the competition play. I agree. I would take Rashad Penny right now ahead of Kenneth Walker. It's tough to know who ends up getting more touches by the end of the season, because the other thing working against Penny here is that, we saw the huge stretch to end last season from him, but everything before that was wildly disappointing versus his first round draft entry into the NFL. So I don't know with him specifically how much to weigh the multiple years of disappointment versus the awesome 6-game stretch, the Seattle letting him hit the open market before ultimately bringing back, and then Seattle adding the 2nd round running back. So where I want to be on Rashad Penny and Kenneth Walker is not over investing on either one, and then when I get toward the middle of the draft, saying, all right, I'll take this guy here, I'll take that guy there, I'll have some exposure to both the guys. Maybe I'll put them both together on the same roster in a certain format. That's more of a best ball thing where I don't have to decide who to start every week. But my primary stance, if I'm planting a flag, is to not trust anything in a Seattle offense that I don't think is going to be very good overall, which obviously could be a big negative for the running backs.
Quickly, Matt, who do you think starts? Quarterback.
I think Rashad Penny starts to open the season. Oh, a quarterback. I would have said Drew Lock probably as of yesterday, and then I'm reading Geno Smith is still getting more.
I think it's going to be Geno
reps. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised either way at this point. It's I guess at this stage, if Drew Lock's not ahead of him, it seems more likely that it's Geno. I don't know. I don't want to bet on anything here.
It's a crazy situation in Seattle, no question about it. And then lastly, some of the other guys a little bit further down. I have Samir White, the rookie, at 56. You guys have him at 84. I have him, and by the way, another rookie. I have Batty at 59, and you guys have him at 119. So with my reasoning with those guys, it's definitely opportunity and potential injury. I can't trust Jacobs, to tell you the truth, and I know the Raiders can't trust him. That's the reason why chances are contract's up, he's gone. So dynasty-wise, you want to take Samir White because by 2023, he might be the number 1 running back. So I think he's talented enough that And I also think that with Josh McDaniels, I think there's going to be some sharing. And I think that as soon as he trusts White, White will get some carries. And if Jacobs gets hurt, maybe you got something. And with Beatty, Baltimore's running back situation, I know we don't have a half hour to talk about it, but nobody knows what's going to go on with Baltimore's running back situation. And I think this is a great opportunity for Beatty because, first of all, I thought he was completely overlooked in the draft. He put up really good numbers in the SEC. I know he's not big, but I don't care. I mean, he's really good at breaking tackles for his size. He could do just about everything you want him to do. And with that Raven offense, I mean, Gus Edwards was productive. So I think Beatty could be given the opportunity to get a lot of touches with Baltimore if things work out. So that's why I have him a little bit higher than you guys. So what do you think about those two running backs? Jared?
Yeah, I mean, you're right about Baltimore's backfield being a total guessing game right now. And I've heard Tyler Beatty buzz. I've heard Justice Hill buzz, Corey Clement. I've heard some buzz on him. So, we'll see what happens there. It's obviously a good situation for running backs. And Beatty had the big 2021 senior season. I just worry, if he fell to the 6th round of the draft, he's only 197 pounds. You look at some of the advanced metrics last year, even they were just kind of mediocre. So I don't love him as a player, but I do love the potential opportunity for a guy you can take with your very last pick in fantasy drafts.
And then the other big one, by the way, was Chubb. I have him at 7. You guys have him at 15. Is that more because of the offense and the uncertainty who the quarterback is? So it's not going to be like they're not going to have his potent passing attack, but they're still going to be a little bit weaker, and so everybody's going to stack the line, and they're not going to let these guys run the football. Is that where you're coming from? Because as far as I'm concerned, I still look at Chubb as a really top running back in the league, so I didn't really feel the need to drop him much. So what was the reasoning, Jared, to drop Chubb?
It's more volume than the offense. I think we'll see how Brissett does the first 6 weeks or whatever it is. Watson will be there eventually. The O-line is still awesome in Cleveland, and I agree. Chubb is still one of the best pure runners in football. So it's more a volume thing. He loses work to Kareem Hunt on the ground near the goal line. Hunt gets a lot of work near the goal line over Chubb, and especially in the passing game, Chubb just does not do a whole lot in the passing game. So, especially in PPR leagues, even in half PPR fantasy leagues, that really hurts Chubb's fantasy production.
All right. And as we close out, let's talk about if, from your knowledge and how you guys have pumped up your fantasy tools and everything that's available at Draft Sharks, because what we're doing here for the first time at Our Lads, again, as I mentioned at the very top, you guys are going to be, it's all over fantasy on Our Lads. So how would you look into the camera and pitch anybody out there that wants to think about purchasing any Draft Sharks products care of Our Lads? What's the pitch?
The pitch, I think, is the Draft Sharks War Room, primarily the Draft War Room, because that's what's going to be arming your drafting. And we've talked about the upside guys and players we would take late in drafts. About halfway through your draft, so you've got the rankings all throughout, and you customize it to begin with. So it has your league settings, your lineup rules. It's specific to your league. Then about halfway through the draft, it'll automatically switch into upside mode. So that's where all these young guys, Greg, that you love, are going to jump up your board, because now you're taking reserves. You're like, I could take boring dude from Arizona, or I can take this exciting guy from Carolina that if he hits, he's going to hit big. They're going to jump up in upside mode, those ceiling projections that Jared was talking about, all the way through the draft. I mean, it's got your back. It's holding your hand. It's making sure that you are taking the best players and building the best roster throughout. And, that's just one of the things, but the Draft War Room is really the thing that propels your draft. It syncs with just about every league commish site at this point. We've got a new sidebar this year that goes on the side of your draft room, so you don't even have to toggle between tabs. In a lot of cases, you can just see the list of players as you draft. It's gotten easier to use. It's as powerful as ever. So that would be my primary selling point.
Yeah, well, you guys,
I think we have the best combination of football knowledge plus those tools. I mean, first of all we do is football. Most of these other sites they're doing baseball, they're doing hockey, they're doing basketball, all that stuff. We're football 24/7, 365 days a year.
That's true.
We've won tons of awards for projections accuracy, for rankings accuracy, for DFS, and then all those tools and mostly the draft war room Matt was talking about. We have a ton of in-season tools. My team will give you weekly projections for all your players based on your scoring system. We have a free agent finder, which will sync up to your league and show you the top free agents available, who we recommend picking up, who we recommend dropping. We have a trade analyzer. So I think it's the combination of our fantasy skills plus those tools that really make a big difference.
Yeah, as you guys are talking, I'm just surfing through our lads. So it's simple. You just hit the fantasy section and you come right in, and all you have to do is scroll down. You see the big red link there that says Draft War Room. You click that, and then there's the Draft War Room. This is your access page. This is where you sign up, and there's a free trial, so you can check that out. And and it's also, we're not talking about a lot of money either. So financially, it's effective, it's affordable, and you guys do a great job, which is the reason why we're really happy to have you on board for our 2022 season. And we hope that, and look, in order for some of it to be successful, we definitely need you guys out there that are interested in you building up your fantasy leagues to join up and use the draft room, use the war room, and come in through our lads. And the more memberships that we can build up, the better on our end. And we're going to continue to be here all season long with Jared and Matt. We're going to figure out exactly when, but we'll be back on August 25th to wrap up everything. And what do you think is going to be our main talking point on that type of show?
To me, it should be basically the biggest things that have changed for us
rankings wise
now and then. Yeah, what we're hearing in training camp, what we're seeing in preseason action, and at that point, that's kind of the heart of draft season. So maybe we can talk about the kind of guys we really want our viewers to make sure they get in drafts.
Yeah, and let us know. So anybody out there, they have any specific questions that need to be answered, suggestions on specific topics that you would like us to discuss on that show, let us know. And we're going to ask you the same thing once we get into the regular season, what you guys want to know on a weekly basis. So we're going to have a lot of fun with this, guys. I really appreciate you taking the time, a little bit over an hour. So we'll do this again one more time, and then we're off to the regular season. So can't wait. And again, thanks a lot, Matt. Thanks, Jared. Jared, no more golf. So I won't talk to you again now until the 25th, just like Matt.
Thanks for having me on, Greg.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Greg. See you guys.